much is here, probably not a lot, but a little. The green is what we have on the website is the National Wetlands Inventory. You can see out in Sierra Valley there's a lot of wetlands. I can tell you right now, as I read the state board, the regional board's discharge permit requirements, cannabis would not be allowed in wetlands. And I'll zoom in where the area we're really talking about. So just looking at this map, you can see the green again. It doesn't show up all that well. There's not a lot of wetlands in this area, but it does come to play. And there, you can see it down over by Clio. So those are basically constraints that are set up that cannabis cultivation would not be allowed. And the final one I just want to turn on, and then we'll go back to finish my presentation. I'm going to turn on the 100-year floodplains. And it just basically in this area follows the river, but the floodplains are also a constraint. Other areas of the county have huge floodplains, and just to give you some idea of that. When you get out into the Sierra Valley, what do you see? A big, huge floodplain. There are floodplains in the American Valley, Indian Valley, all over the county. This is a rich county in water. Maybe that's why we're effectively the water source for the California wildfire. All right, my brief zoning presentation. My slide is pulled over. The objectives of the ordinance effectively address neighborhood compatibility issues with cultivation and cannabis-related activities. That is a prime objective of this ordinance. That's what these people are trying to achieve, and how we test that and improve that is input from you. So that's one of the reasons we have this hearing, is to get your input. The ordinance is to set standards as allowed under personal law for state law for personal recreational cannabis cultivation. I went over that a little bit. I believe the zoning handout has some more information on that. And the zoning handout also has information on permit types. Primarily, we have permits that are what we call ministerial. If you meet the standards, the planning department is obliged to issue the permit under law. And then we have discretionary permitting, which is the special use permit in this county, where we have standards, but then we have an environmental review, public hearings on it, and because it's discretionary, it doesn't necessarily have to be approved. This is a pathway for illegal cultivation on private lands to become legal. We know what's going on. All this, the state law and the county ordinance will do that. And also we're trying to align our local cannabis rules with the state rules to provide a pathway for local permits, people getting permits to get a state permit. And again, I'm not sure if we know what those state rules are. Some reports. We're setting standards for personal recreational growing. Right now there are no standards, so I guess I would have to disclose to you that everybody that has a residence can plant 6 plants. But I want to qualify that a little bit. I think some of you may live in subdivisions with CC&Rs. They could effectively preclude outdoor growing if they wanted. I don't think they have right now, but those homeowners associations can have a shot at this too. Develop a local commercial permitting process. We don't have that. Again, if we do that, staff's recommendation, there'll be an associated tax. Now, the way permitting works is if you get a permit from the planning department, we can only charge you the cost of our cost to issue that permit. And that with cannabis can include future enforcement. We figure, okay, so many hours to go out and check these things every once in a while. But we don't really have a funding mechanism for illegal grows. I know the Sheriff's Department works with the National Forest And conjunctively, I'm glad that they do that, but we don't really have a lot of funds to go after illegal cannabis operations on private lands. Hence, the tax comes to play. If we're taxing it, we can use that money for enforcement, education, a number of things. It sets standards for commercial cultivation, including setbacks, security, fencing, inspections, fire safe standards, a whole array. We have a matrix back there that's an overview of the zoning and this ordinance, and I encourage you to pick it up because it matches the colors on the GIS, whether you go to the county GIS or you look at the one I did. We're using what's called standard hub planning colors for our maps. And again, those are handouts, and then we're at the public comment period.
Okay. All right, maybe we can turn the lights on. Good, yeah. Right there, Dave. There you go. Okay. All right. Public comment period. We're going to get through this process. What we'll do is what I'd like to start off with first is the local folks here from Blairsden. This is your meeting, so I'd like those folks that are here from Blairsden to come up first, and then we'll get into the other folks that are from outside the county or other outside of this district. Kind of the rules set down. We'll have 3 minutes for each speaker. If you know, there's you can if you have somebody that with you that shares that same sentiment, we'll go ahead and allow that person to give you that 3 minutes to continue, or he is 3 minutes to continue your talk. And kind of in interest of time, if you hear some of the same comments that you're thinking about wanting to say, because we're going to be charting them over here, we're also recording it, and feel free to obviously duplicate the comments that you've heard, but if you do feel that your comment has been addressed by another individual, you know, it would be great in the interest of time maybe not to repeat it over and over again. But we've seen this process go pretty well in Greenville and Chester. Again, courtesy is always welcome and is encouraged. We definitely want to have that because we have it's a controversial issue. We want courtesy for everybody when they're speaking to please hold your comments to yourself and vice versa. So what I'll do now is open up the floor for public comment. If you'd like to just, we don't really have a podium like we have at other places, so I guess just stand in place, I guess, would be all right. And I will start my little timer thing here, and we'll go from there. So just raise your hand, and go ahead and get started. Anybody like to make a public comment?
I'd like to make a quick one, please.
Okay, hold on, just a sec here. Yeah, for the district, for the Grayville district, yeah, go ahead.
So I'll stand over here again.
Okay.
So first off, I want to thank everybody for coming, I guess. So talking to friends, family, other people in the community, I've kind of heard a consensus, you can say, about this. And they believe that people that growing in this area should be, whether, I don't know if you guys are, the board is leaning towards legalization, like recreational or medical, or if it's 100 plants or 6 plants or whatever, but overall, I think that people who do grow, if it does get permitted or whatnot, they should have to live in this community, in the area for X amount of time or years. That way, if people don't come from other counties, states, other countries, come into our area and use and abuse our resources just to profit from that and export that money or whatever that happens out back to wherever they're from, basically. And I do want to say that I work for the federal government, I work for the Forest Service, and I've personally witnessed the damage that marijuana grows can do on the forest. And I've spent weeks cleaning up these dump sites, garbage sites, disgusting areas, and I know people that have been exposed to really serious chemicals and fertilizers and stuff, and it's affected them medically from it. And I can see both the negatives and the positives for legalization, both recreational and medicinal. And that was kind of the gist of it. If people are allowed to grow in this area, they should be from the area. They shouldn't be from other areas trying to get money, trying to get rich, trying to export that money to wherever they're from, basically. It should be for the community and stay within the community.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else from Grey Eagle District like to make a public comment? Okay. Yes, sir, go ahead.
I'd like to clarify one thing with your expertise. I've heard that should the Board of Supervisors adopt an ordinance at the end of this process, that will put them in one of the two pools that the state has. If you don't have an ordinance, you're not eligible for any future state revenue, is that correct? And if you do have an ordinance, you are eligible for some of that, is that correct?
I defer to
Try
Randy.
not to do a lot of response. The state law has taxes in it, and there is some distribution. I don't know if I can absolutely say that I think if we don't have an ordinance, we're unlikely to see some of those dollars. I don't know for sure. I don't think anybody knows. That's why I'm trying to tell you, the state's still kind of moving around a little bit. If we do permit locally and the state will tax it as well as us, there would be some enforcement coming back from the state, and our tax dollars would also be used for enforcement.
I see, okay. Well, I just want to state that if it does sort itself out, that the state says, those of you who have gotten out front of this and made a local ordinance, however it's constructed, are eligible for certain funds, and those of you who haven't or not, then that would be a great impetus for Board of Supervisors to adapt some kind of ordinance, however you want to shape it. I don't care how you shape it, because it doesn't affect me, but thank you.
Okay. Anybody else from the local district here? Yes.
I'm for the state regulations and going for what the state's going for. Feel like-
Mirroring the state.
Yeah, mirroring the state's trend of regulating, cultivation, and in a sense, if it's going to benefit our county and our local communities, mirroring what we're trying to say over there, that money is going to be used to help our local public schools and public, safety measures, along with, things for the senior citizens. What else was there? Something else that kind of mirrored a lot of what Colorado was doing. As long as it benefits like us and our community, more or less, stays within our area, I'm for it, for state regulations.
Of course, we have heard that before about schools benefiting from taxes on things like that.
So are you going to go ahead and start?
And it usually never does get to the school, whether it's the lottery or whatever. Has the county addressed property values on how they could be affected by growers next door and being possibly liable for declining property values?
We have not addressed that directly, no, but it's definitely something that we'll write down right here, right now. She's writing your comment down, and we'll definitely be looking at that.
Thank you.
Anybody else from Grey Eagle?
Wait, what is going on right now?
Anybody else from Grey Eagle, from the Grey Eagle district here in this district that would like to make a public comment?
District 1 with Portola?
No, just this district. Your meeting will be next week.
We'll still be able to talk, but we just
Yeah.
So what I would say kind of mirrors what he said, and what also he was just talking about schools and property value. A friend of mine lives in Calaveras County, and they adopted like a really liberal growing policy, and as a result, a lot of people from out of the area came in, bought up all the land, and pushed a lot of the residents out. So I think what he said about people living in the area for a certain amount of time is very important.
Anybody else?
Written comments. Feel
Yeah.
free to put written comments. Sometimes it's hard to talk at these kinds of meetings.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to say that I don't know that any residency requirements are going to stand a legal challenge, but the density of growing should probably solve that problem.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to reiterate what Randy said here. Like you say, if you're sitting here and you're thinking about some comments, and you say your 3 minutes worth of comments, and you go back home and you think about some things some more, and you come up with some other comments that you'd like to submit, feel free to submit them to the planning department, to Randy, or to Becky,
For Jeff?
or to Jeff, to your supervisor, yes, and we'll definitely put those in the record so that the board sees them, the planning commission sees them, and we see them here at the Cannabis Working Group level. So with that, anybody else? Sir, yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, it kind of piggybacks on what everybody else said about keeping it local, but I feel like the important part is to keep the kids around here. Like, I know so many people take off, go to college, never come back. It's like, I want these families, my friends, come back to the community. This is something that can keep them there, you know? We have been growing in this area for years and years. We pretty much have our own trademark, you know? It's kind of like Mendocino or anything like that. Like, people know Plymouth County, so I just feel like we already have it in shop. We shouldn't be looking to import, it's all about exporting. And that's my whole thing. So.
I saw another hand back there, I thought.
I'm not from this district.
Okay, so hang on just a little bit, let me get through that real quick here and see if anybody else here has any comments from this district here, Jeff's district. Again, I want to actually publicly thank your supervisor over here, Jeff Engel, for chairing the meeting last week that I wasn't at, so he's a good guy. Anyway, go ahead. Anybody else?
I just kind of have a question, like to say the last one. Is there any kind of breakdown on like the permit process for, you were saying, you know, it's going to be all these fees that we go to different entities. Is there any kind of breakdown of like what's actually going to stay in our county?
We
Where
don't.
that money is going to be spent, what it's going to be for?
We
or
haven't
is it
really
this?
gotten that deep into the weeds yet, and so. Boy, that just came out. Anyway.
More or less, referring back to my first comments was, I was more interested in saying that I'd rather like, through all the permit process and everything to be going through, so that I want money to be spent locally to benefit, you know.
Well, like a permit process is definitely it's a Prop 218 process where you have to, the county will have to go through that Prop 218 process and figure out how much it's going to cost them to administer those permits and fees and do the enforcement and making sure that everybody's complying, and then we come up with a set fee schedule, correct?
Yeah, maybe it'll fit within our existing fee schedule for special use permits if we all end up there. The other factor is, again, staff's saying, do an ordinance to tie it to a successful tax measure so that there is that benefit. And if we don't do the tax measure associated with it, we do the ordinance, I don't think we'll ever get the tax measure because who wants to voluntarily tax themselves, so.
Okay, anybody else from Grey Eagle like to make a comment? All right, if not, we'll move on to outside of Grey Eagle in Plymouth County, and this just encompass all the other 4 districts, and I guess anybody else that would like to make a comment. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Harry Rogers. I'm a cattle rancher and hay farmer from Indian Valley. I'm also the president of the Plymouth County Growers Coalition. I just want to stop for a second, and the gentleman over there with the sunglasses that talked about the kids staying here, I commend you for that. I have 4 boys, and it's right on point. Thank you very much. Cannabis is now recognized by the Department of Food and Agriculture as an agricultural commodity. That's why they are the agency who will be regulating cannabis at the state level. Cannabis is just a plant. It is nothing to be afraid of. Yes, there is a smell associated with it for a short period near harvest time, but that's not unlike garlic, onions, hog farming, cattle ranching, poultry production. I can go on and on. Right now, there's a lot of cannabis being grown in Plymouth County, and all of it is completely unregulated. For the state regulations to take effect, the state requires each county to develop their own ordinance. That is what has taken place over the last several months. This has been a concerted effort. At the table has been the planning department, the ag commissioner, county council, the sheriff's department, 2 county supervisors, the 5 members of the working group, as well as input from the public. Every meeting has been open to the public. The State Water Resource Control Board, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Stream Enforcement Division, and the California Department of Agriculture have all conducted meetings regarding cannabis here in Plymouth County. This ordinance strictly follows the current land use regulations for Plymouth County. It only allows cultivation in zones that already allow agriculture or horticulture as an approved use, and in many instances also requires a special use permit. I feel that the ordinance, as it is currently written, does a good job in balancing private property rights with the rights of neighbors by requiring setbacks, fencing, light and sound restrictions, and security measures. let's get this ordinance passed and start getting every grower in compliance to ensure that our precious water, soil, streams, meadows, and forests are protected for future generations. Thank you.
In the back, right there.
So I have two questions. Firstly, and I couldn't find the answer to these questions in here, which is why I'm asking them. Is there going to be an area, like the state of Colorado has, if you're just going to plagiarize what other states do, that says if you have a felony, you don't get to enter this business? That'll keep a lot of the unsavory elements out. And secondly, as I read in this currently, the state is giving current nonprofits a 1-year grandfather or something from the time they post on their website that it's over. Can I get clarification on the grandfathering of nonprofits that I read in here, please?
I can do the first one pretty easily.
Okay.
I think the state's gonna have a lot of background checks for their permits, and I think felons, I can't remember if they qualify, but there's a lot of background checks that they'll have to go through to get a state permit. The second one was, again,
My
remind me.
grandfather clause.
The grandfather, it's really not a grandfather clause. What we have in the state of California right now, if you have medical scripts, you can combine them together, and you can, the sheriff shows up, he's got to look at those scripts, and he's going, what do I do? So what the state is doing is kind of letting some of that process work out for another year. Please correct me, because some people on the may know more. So that'll phase out in another year, and it'll be just under the system that they're creating.
Thank you.
The state is gonna have a grandfathering law for nonprofits that have been in business prior to all these new laws. I don't know exactly the stipulations on it, but they will have it. And I just wanna say I agree with these two guys here about keeping it local, for local people here, and to keep our kids here, and the money stay here too.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Lane LeBay. I live in the Quincy area. I'm a farmer. Got a smaller ranch property. We do a variety of things. I've recently gotten involved in cannabis cultivation last year under the 215 collective nonprofit model. And one thing that I would like to ask Randy and the county is I'm a little fuzzy on the revenues that the county can generate. I've talked with the State Board of Equalization that's told me that tax revenue is split 50-50, retail tax revenue, let's say from a dispensary. Those revenues are taxed, the county, I guess, gets to keep half, the state gets to keep half, something like that.
Well, I think we're still kind of, working
Okay,
that
trying
out.
to figure that out.
Yeah.
Other counties have done studies, commiserated studies to look at the economic benefits. So just a suggestion that maybe the county ought
We'll write it down.
to look at a study. If it's not
I think we talked about
crazy
that briefly.
expensive.
We've already talked about that briefly doing that, so.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right, anybody?